Well, hello everybody. This is Richard from Resonant Frequency, the amateur radio podcast, and the Linux in the Ham Shack podcast. Uh, like to say hello to everybody and welcome you to this light overview of Linux for the amateur radio operator. Y'all know I stumble on what I say all the time. Okay, what we're looking at right now is the Ubuntu desktop. Ubuntu is the Linux distribution that was mentioned by the ARRL on their website some time back. And this is basically what it looks like. It may be reminiscent for some of you of the Apple desktop. Those of you using Windows, it's a little different, but it could be made to look like Windows. That's one of the primary advantages of Linux as opposed to Windows and some of the other operating systems is the fact that they are very configurable. Okay, you also find that it comes pre-installed with a bunch of extra stuff. I've installed some of these things, but most of it was already pre-installed. Things like Firefox, Gwibber, Thunderbird, which I use as mail client, XChat for IRC, an Office suite, of course, Open Office, because it's not proprietary, and other stuff. I mean, CD burners, all kinds of stuff. So this is the desktop in Ubuntu, and I really don't want y'all to be too nervous about this, because it's actually not much of a change. Now, this particular machine that we're running on right now just so happens to be a Dell, a dual core Dell running Ubuntu 10.10 Maverick Meerkat, which is all these Linux distributions, and it could be anything. A lot of them have code names. Current kernel version, current version of GNOME, which is this particular desktop that we're using here today. And you can see that there's a gig and a half of memory in it, and it has 2.8 gigahertz, or well, it's a dual core machine. And we currently have 286 and a half gigs on the hard drive. So this is what we're using today. But we do talk about other distributions and ones that are smaller and lighter and will run on older equipment. One of the thing I want to focus on today is the amateur radio operator aspect. If you open up the package manager, and this is Synaptic, which is a package manager, as opposed to having to go out and find every piece of software out on the internet that you're looking for amateur radio or anything. You will find a lot of the stuff you need and could use in the package manager. And we'll discuss package managers a little further on for those of y'all that are interested. For those of you who are not interested in Linux, ain't going to touch Linux, ain't going to have anything to do with Linux, then I guess it's a moot point. But just remember that Firefox is an open source project and available in Linux. Open Office is an open source project, and Linux is open source. Windows is not. Okay, so so much for our commercial on Linux. Here you'll see that it says amateur radio, and right next to it says universe. Okay, you have to turn on some repositories like Multiverse and Universe, and we might even do a short video on how to do that if this pans out, if we get some viewers. But anyway, so in Synaptic, if you click on sections and then click on amateur radio, and the amateur radio stuff is available, I know for sure, in Ubuntu, SUSE, and Fedora, which is Red Hat based, for those of you who have heard of Red Hat. If you look in the package manager, you have the name of the program, its version number, whether it's installed or not, and a short description of the program. Let's go to Aldo, which is number 2 here. And if you click on Aldo, it'll show you a longer description. Aldo is a Morse code training tool, which provides 4 types of training, blah, blah, blah. And in some cases, you can even get a screenshot of some of the newer software. It just so happens that one does not have a screenshot. But if we go on down, we can take a look, and there's a program for doing antenna radiation patterns. This is APRS software, packet radio software. As we scroll down, there's software for running Baycom modems. For those of y'all who have dealt with that, CallGet will bring you the information from QRZ to your desktop. You have a DX cluster program here, another CW program, a plug-in to run CW over IRC, F6 FBB packet BBS for those who have been around for a while. If y'all remember the Worldwide Packet Radio Network, we primarily used AA4RE or F6 FBB BBS software to accomplish that, and it's still available, and they are doing some limited development on it. Right below that is FLDigi. FLDigi is a full-blown digital communications program for running things like PSK, Olivia, Hellschreiber, RIDI, that kind of stuff, all wrapped up in one bundle. You might have heard of FLDigi because part of the stuff that's going on over at Ham Radio Deluxe uses code from FLDigi. Now, I recently talked to the developer of FLDigi, and he says anything that touches his code has to be open source. So there's some DM something or other over at HRD that is open source because it uses parts of FLDigi. There's another PSK program, GMFSK, satellite tracking, rig control with G-Rig. You can also do rig control through some of these other programs like FLDigi and some of the login programs. Software, rig control for ICOM radios. There's a logging program, Klog. I use a different one. I went out on the internet and got it, and that's another one that is on the video list if we're able to keep the videos going. The Node is another packet, is Node software for packet radio. NEC and NEC2C are antenna modeling programs. There's even a slow scan TV program right there, QSS TV. Trusted QSL for you guys that use Logbook of the World. Trusted QSL is available in Linux, and despite what you may have heard to the contrary, they are still developing that. WSJT is a weak signal mode. It's kind of like Whisper for amateur radio communications. Some of y'all may be involved in that. This is the #1 APRS program in Linux right now, Zaster. And it's been around a while. And see, that one's got a little bit of a screenshot, and I don't know if we can blow that up for y'all, but we'll give it a shot. There you go. That's kind of like what it looks like when it's running. And I know the quality on this video is not real great, but hey, it's my first one other than recording stuff over at Ustream. So there's a picture of Zaster, which is a pretty good. It's as good as anything I've seen in Windows. XDX is a DX cluster client, which I've used myself. I like it a lot. I have used Xlog in the past, but really didn't care for it much. That's why I went to, it doesn't do what I want it to do. And that's why I went to the other logging program that I use. So that pretty much covers the software that's actually in the repositories. As far as software in the repositories, there's thousands of things. Thousands. You've got, let's see if I can find some other stuff here that's, anyway, we got stuff for the GNOME desktop. We've got stuff for KDE further down, which is another desktop environment. See, that's one of the interesting things about Linux is the fact that the desktop is not tied to the operating system. So if you don't like what you're using, use something else. Okay. Also, the Firefox, which I know you guys are, very few of y'all, at least that listen to me, are using Internet Explorer. I can see that in the downloads over on the website. This is our new website, by the way. And I know that Chrome runs under Linux. I know that Firefox runs under Linux. And I'm not sure if Safari does. I'll have to check into that. But one thing about Apple stuff, if it'll run on Apple, there might possibly be a way to run it on Linux, because you can run some Linux stuff on Apple and everything else. Anyway, this is our new website. Come by and visit it. And I think that's pretty much all we can really say about Linux or as an overview of Linux for the amateur radio operators. Oh yeah, I remember what I was going to do. The logging program I use is CQR log. And CQR log is a pretty full-blown, full-featured amateur radio logging software. And if the internet will ever pick up, we'll be good to go. CQR log. And I'm going to do a longer video of this if I can, when I can, when time allows. And unfortunately, I can't seem to find the screenshots, but it does everything. Well, maybe not everything, but most everything. And it will run on different flavors of Linux. I believe it'll even run on Windows. All right. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us for this video. I hope it's helpful for you. And depending on how the views and downloads go, I'm sure there'll be some more. So with that, take care of yourself and your families. This is Richard, KB5JBV and 73.